before we get into this episode, there's something that might be of interest that I wanted to tell you about. Scene and Herd, who run this podcast, have been asked by Scotland Food and Drink to undertake a strategic review of the Scotland Food and Drink Excellence Awards. Now, these Excellence Awards have been going for almost 20 years and are a huge mainstay of the food and drink sector. But it's time to ensure that they're still relevant. So if you have ever been involved in the Scotland Food and Drink Excellence Awards, or even if you've ever had an opinion about them, we would love for you, please, to complete our survey. So if you go to the OnFARM Twitter, which is at @on_farm UK, and click the link in the bio, there will be a tab in there that will take you to the survey, and it should only take you a very short while to complete, but we would be enormously grateful.
Welcome to episode 8 of our OnFARM podcasts in association with the Royal Highland Agricultural Society of Scotland. My name's Monty, Ross Montague, and this is our first episode to go out after the 180th Highland Show unfortunately couldn't take place. Well done to everyone who took part in the RSABI's campaign #KeepTalking, to get on the phone to people, to stay connected, and to basically look after our mental health. We enjoyed reading all of the posts on social media. They were brilliant. Thank you also, huge thanks in fact, to everyone who used the time they might have been at the Highland Show to catch up with our podcasts. We were delighted to see listener numbers shoot up last week. Brilliant. If you know anyone who would love to hear our future episodes on farm, which is on food, agriculture and rural matters, please share. Please point them in the right direction. You know how simple it is to listen, and I'm sure you guys as our listeners would be the best placed to attract new listeners too. Thank you. Today, right now, is quite literally the calm before the storm. I'm just about to start gathering in sheep for clipping. We've got a new squad of clippers coming this year. I believe we've got some award-winning Scottish and UK shearers this year. And that links in very well with what we're going to discuss later in this episode, when we'll talk about some of the competitions and skills supported by RHASS. This episode is all about the Highland Society's grants, bursaries and other support. We're going to start off with some hearty congratulations
to our 2 gold winners, Lambert and Dyson and Limagrain UK. Your medals will be coming to you in the next couple of weeks. Thank you and stay safe.
So that was Highland Society Director Jim Warnock announcing this year's 2 gold award winners in the annual RHASS Technical Innovation Awards. That was Limagrain UK for their winter wheat breeding programme and Lambert and Dyson for their PTO hot water pressure washer. Both of those companies told us they're extremely chuffed with the accolade.
My name's Matthew Lambert. I'm Sales Director in a family company called Lambert and Dyson Ltd.
I'm Will Charlton, Arable Marketing Manager for Limagrain UK.
Our hot water PTO pressure washer unit that won the gold award. Usually when you're running a hot water pressure washer you need an external power source, either mains electric or a generator or something along those lines. The beauty about this machine and the innovation with it is that we've used a burner unit that pulls all of its power from the tractor. If you have a barrel of water in a field, within minutes of getting set up, you're up and running.
So the award was won for our wheat breeding programme. We put together a presentation and package of the activities which we carry out at our main wheat breeding research facility in Woolpit in Suffolk. We also got a person with a drone to take a flight over of the extensive trials we have at Woolpit to show the scale and size of the work we carry out.
3 years ago we won the Silver Award, which we were delighted with. The way that the system works, you are allowed to reapply the same machine to be upgraded to a Gold Award, and all being well, if you can show that it's doing the job that you told them 3 years ago and that sales are going well and every customer's happy with it, then they look at that and say yes or no to whether you're good for a gold, and apparently we were.
It means a huge amount. It means a huge amount to get this kind of recognition from an institution such as the Royal Highland Show.
All farmers in this country, we've found, love a recommendation. If they're looking at a piece of machinery and they think, yeah, it looks all right, but I'd like to know what somebody else thinks about it, to have an organisation like the Highland, a well-respected society, to put a rubber stamp on something and say, yeah, this is a good machine, that's cracking advertising for us.
Thank you and well done to both companies, and also all those that won silver awards and commendations. It's been part of the DNA of the Society since it was founded in 1784 to reward this kind of excellence and innovation.
The Society is based on our Royal Charter, and within that is a clear and strong education and learning and development link.
Alan Laidlaw is the Society's Chief Executive.
So there's a strong root and a strong thread of DNA right the way through the Society of supporting learning and education through charitable bursaries or events or training and competitions. Not everyone knows that about the Society. They don't understand that we could fulfil our charitable requirements away from the show as well.
Many RHASS awards and bursaries go to encourage and support younger people, not least through partnerships with the Nuffield Farming Scholarship Trust, offering life-changing travel and study overseas.
So I am Penny Montgomery. I am the Chief Executive of the Scottish Association of Young Farmers Clubs, and I'm also this year a current Nuffield Scholar. Nuffield is one of the organisations that RHASS sponsor. So they are my official sponsor for my study at the moment. And then RHASS are also just a huge supporter of SAYFC. So on a practical level, they're a landlord. We're based on the showground. But then they give us so much more help and advice throughout the year, financially and physically as well.
Do you want to tell us a little bit more about your scholarship and how RHASS have helped with that?
I was awarded a Nuffield Scholarship in November 2018. So I'm a 2019 Nuffield Scholar. And the scholarship involves individuals studying a topic that they're passionate about. So my topic is the role young farmers groups should be playing in developing British agriculture. So once you're through the application process, you're then allocated a sponsor. And I was lucky enough that RHASS were my sponsor.
And sponsor, that means what? They help you to meet the costs? Or
RHASS provide funding to Nuffield. We're sent off, we can go wherever we want in the world to look at different organisations, different individuals and how they're working on that particular topic you're looking at. One of the biggest challenges I've had with my Nuffield Scholarship is you can go anywhere in the world, which sounds great, but actually trying to pin it down can be quite difficult as well. So far I have been to America, Canada, New Zealand. I had been hoping to go a bit more out of my comfort zone and go to a sort of non-English speaking country, maybe Kenya, Singapore, but COVID put pay to that, unfortunately.
Oh. Yeah, so your plans are another bit of a casualty of COVID then, really?
The full conference has been cancelled, but they're still working on what the alternative's going to look like. It could be that we present in 2021 instead of 2020, but in the meantime we need to get on and write our reports. You've
personally obviously had support from RHASS, but you're obviously also Chief Exec of SAYFC, and RHASS are, as you say, a big supporter. Do you want to talk a bit more about that?
Yeah, so, RHASS are there. They've got a fantastic staff team that can offer support and help to me individually. They're always there to help a helping hand. They cut our grass outside the Young Farmer Centre. So there's a whole vast range of practical ways they help, as well as some financial assistance as well. So there's some annual scholarships that we receive from RHASS. So we are lucky enough that we get to send an individual to the Oxford Farming Conference every year. So that's subsidised by RHASS. We've applied in the past for various different sort of projects and initiatives. So every second year we have a long haul study tour, which RHASS have contribute towards as well. So in 2018, there was 16 individuals went to California. There was supposed to be 16 individuals going to Chile in December this year. But again, that's been put on hold. It's one of the projects they're funding at the moment for us, which is one of the most important for me, is we have a leadership programme, Cultivating Leaders. So again, RHASS have supported funding for that for the next couple of years as well, which is fantastic just to have that. So it is a 6-day programme. We are lucky that we are able to pull in a lot of sort of industry experts, so Royal Bank of Scotland, Campbell Dallas, Galbraiths, Leadingham Charmers, and they get that sort of real life example from the experts and the knowledge, whether it's doing a business plan or delving more into the finance of issues. Then we've got that really great pool of people that actually sort of lead it and contribute it, which is great.
So really all about bringing on the next generation of, well, as you call them, leaders. Yeah.
And I think, so they do, they get that practical knowledge, but also the key thing is actually the network. So they then go away with, it's 16 individuals from throughout Scotland that take part. Most of them might not have met their counterparts before, but actually they've been really strong networks going forward. So they've got their counterparts, but they've also then got those networks of the professionals as well that they can tap into. And it's maybe not this year, next year, it's maybe in 10 years' time, but they've made those connections that they can use in the future.
Yeah, a key thing that SAYFC and I'm guessing RHASS share, you're about bringing people in and showcasing what agriculture and food and the rural world is about, and also opening up people's eyes to the career opportunities within those sectors as well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we've got a role to play. We've got access to young people that maybe haven't actually made decisions about their careers. And it's not all about pointing them to be farmers. There's so many different career options within farming and different support roles that they could play within agriculture and rural as well. It's not just about farming.
Obviously, the Highland Show didn't happen this year. And unfortunately, we've got none of the local shows happening this year either. What do you think your members are going to miss most about the shows? So
there's two things really. There is, just like everyone else, it is just going to the show and meeting up with people. You don't see that regularly. And it might be somebody from Caithness that's meeting somebody from Lanarkshire. It's that whole network and that broken sort of chain. And the other thing actually is the competition for us. So Young Farmers is built around competition. So things like tug of war, there'll be members who are training from January with tug of war teams, and they might be training 1 or 2 times a week, and they don't have that sort of social interaction at the moment. And it goes for all our other competitions, stock judging, arts and crafts. They don't just rock up at the Highland Show and take part. It's actually that sort of build up. It's eliminations at some of the local shows. It is that sort of that interaction ongoing, not just that sort of 4 days of the Highland Show.
And it's fun. It's fun as well, isn't it? It's social and It's fun. I personally remember back to my Young Farmers days and the show circuit, and if we didn't have a local show, we'd be looking to another one to go to every weekend of the year if we could. Yeah. Completely. It's a big hole.
Yeah, definitely.
I think, speaking to you, I wish I could be more involved now, because that was just a brilliant time, Young Farmers, and I don't think I would personally be able to do this, for example, a podcast, if it hadn't been for Young Farmers speech making, and if it hadn't been for the network that you meet. And yes, that can be fun and it can be silly and it can be over a few drinks or more than a few drinks, but it sticks with you. It's a very valuable thing that sticks with you. Young Farmers does so much for people in the rural Scotland. I
think that's where actually the great support we get from RHASS is partly down to the fact that a lot of the RHASS directors were past members as well. So they'll, as you've just said, they're potentially where they are because of the skills they gained from Young Farmers. And actually going forward, we are the feeder for their next trustees as well, their next directors. So it's good that we're working so closely together.
We regularly see people developing hugely, whether they be like Penny Montgomery travelling on an Uffield scholarship, or somebody going on one of our bursaries to the Royal Agricultural Society to the Commonwealth. It's quite a broad mix of support that we give to people, and mostly it's about people learning or developing an existing interest, and that's what really excites me. I think it's probably one of my most privileged parts of my role, is seeing people with a passion and an interest asking for help, we're in a position that we can grant them either networks and resources or finance, and you see them when they come back and they've developed, they've grown, they've expanded their knowledge, and there are great examples all around Scotland of people who have learnt by being supported by RHASS through different scholarships that are now industry leaders making a real difference to our sphere. So it's a real no-brainer from my perspective, because at the end of the day, you would hope that somebody in Scottish agriculture who is supported by RHASS and the organisation to go and study and learn, hopefully they'll be able to contribute more to the society and to the sector. So it's a virtuous, positive circle from my perspective.
So RHASS support a whole lot of traditional but useful rural skills and the training therein. Things like farriery, the new forge at Ingliston is all set up to support the Scottish team. And the support that they give to the shearing guys, these guys are at the top of their game, translates directly into the skills of the team on my farm just now, clipping my ewes.
Every bursary or award has to go back to our founding principles of our charter. Is it advancing rural Scotland? Is it advancing the crafts of rural Scotland or the people of rural Scotland? And if it's doing that, then we're able to support it. Sheep shearers are absolutely essential to keep, especially on warm weeks like this, when we're recording today, to keep our sheep healthy and safe. The wool that they produce is a great sustainable product, and without investing in young sheep shearing talent, we won't have those people there to do a key job. So we invest in them by running the competition at the Royal Highland Show, but also making sure we financially support them and our farriers in the equestrian world to travel internationally to compete with the best.
The shearing competition at the show is always a big draw for visitors. And indeed, when anyone sets up and does a demonstration of shearing at any of the local shows throughout Scotland, that too is a big draw. Shearing at the Highland Show also makes for a very busy day for the next person we're going to hear from. Geordie Dunn, a former director of the Highland Society, runs livestock haulage company Campbell's of Oxton. Each year it's his job to transport hundreds, sometimes thousands of sheep on and off the showground to be shorn for the competition.
Ever since they had the World Champions, 2006, the late Jimmy Sharp was in charge of the shearing, and he come on to speak to us about bringing the sheep in, because I think they'd over 3,000, and they preferred if they just had one contractor to do the job and then he could control it better. So I've done it since then. But it's a big job, and it's all well planned. They all come locally, the sheep, when I say locally, from Peeblesshire. But the biggest thing is try to keep them dry before the clipping event, because it's quite late for a hog before it gets clipped in the middle of June, when it's usually the 1st of June.
You have to get them there that morning, you have to get them there on the straight off the clipping table and back onto the lorry.
You're given a timetable by the chief steward when they want the sheep in, from about 7:30 in the morning till about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So the lorries just arrive at that specific time, so there's not a traffic jam at the shearing shed.
So we've now heard from Penny about benefits to a range of younger people offered by RHASS. Mist, quiet. Geordie Dunn was also instrumental in making a fairly major change impacting people at the other end of the age spectrum. We are talking basically about the Royal Highland Society and the awards and bursaries and the sort of things that they do that maybe not a lot of people know of. But I really wanted to speak with you about the long service medals. I understand that when you were a director, you were keen to change the long service medals to make it that it wasn't just about farm workers, is that right?
Well, that's right in a way, because farm workers are getting less and less. There's only 1 or 2 in each farm now. And I just thought agricultural related industries, be it auctioneers, mechanical, and drivers, livestock. And I'm very fortunate, I've got a good staff, and one was at 40 years and one was at 30, and I've another one at 29. And we discussed it as directors at the show, and it came forward last year. So I put my 2 men forward, and they were accepted, and we had a presentation in February, just before lockdown, thankfully. And it's a good honour, because there's not many folk employed for over 30 years.
No.
And it stuck by them, and stuck by me.
Yeah.
So, no, they appreciate it.
And you would encourage other hauliers and others involved?
Oh, yes, definitely, but you have to watch, it has to be agricultural related. I mean, there'll be other different holidays, different employment over 30 years, but it's not in the farming side.
Yeah. So businesses like machinery dealerships and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I think there was a machinery dealer there. I think there's 2 got the long service medal for Kelso.
This year?
Yeah.
Yeah. The drivers enjoyed the presentation and...
Oh, they did, yeah. Our lunch started at 12:30 and went on to 6 o'clock, and they had a very enjoyable day.
Right, they wouldn't be driving home after that.
No, the next day.
And who were your drivers?
Alan Henderson, who's done 40 years here, and William Hill, who's done 30 years.
Hello, I'm Willie Hill and I've worked with Campbell's for 35 years.
You were recipient of a Royal Highland Society Long Service Medal.
Yes, aye.
Does it make 35 years worthwhile?
Aye, getting recognition for what you've done over the years, like, because there's been a hell of a changes over the years from when you started, and aye, things have moved on a lot. It's the same as the whole industry, like whether it's hauling livestock or anything else in the firm, just the way things have moved. Again,
I hope so far in this episode you're now starting to see the breadth of people and organisations benefiting from the money you spend on your Highland Show ticket, your Highland Society membership, or your charitable donation to RHASS. It's more important than ever to keep these things in mind in this year when we've lost the show to coronavirus. The loss of revenue to the Society from the cancelled show is estimated at £4.8 million. So that's £4.8 million they don't have to spend on some of the activities we're talking about. Lastly in this episode, we're going to hear from an organisation set up with the support of RHASS and NFU Scotland 100 years ago. It's now a world-class disease research centre working on the behalf of farmers.
I'm Professor Lee Innes. I work at the Morden Research Institute. Morden is quite a unique organisation because we are owned and governed by farmers. What we do is we conduct research to try and get solutions to prevent and control livestock diseases. So working with sheep and cattle mainly. We were set up 100 years ago by Scottish farmers. We're actually very proud of our history, that today our ethos and our mission statement is exactly the same now as it was then. The farmers usually prioritise for us which diseases they would like us to work on, but the focus is very much on providing a solution. So while many researchers perhaps at universities might be pursuing science for science sake, at Morden we're looking to pursue science and apply the most modern technologies to get a solution. So for example, at Morden we're very keen to develop vaccines because we think disease prevention is better than cure. And you're probably aware that there's a lot of controversy about overuse of antimicrobials and medicines and drugs, etc. So we're very aware of that. So what we try to do is get a solution where you can avoid the disease or prevent the disease. And that can be knowledge through testing, whether it be monitoring parasites or testing for what causes abortion in sheep or cattle. You can have a much more targeted approach if you know what you're dealing with. So our strategy is to find out as much as we can about what causes the disease and how you diagnose it, how you tackle it. Not far different from what people are trying to do at the moment with COVID-19. And then when we get a vaccine or something that will work for the farmers, we look to get that commercialised and out there so that they can use it, because it's not much use if it's in our lab and it's not available to the farmers. And we developed recently the first vaccine against parasitic worms, and we commercialised that ourselves to get it out and make it available to farmers.
Yeah, so 100 years. This is, did I get this right? This was meant to be a celebration this year of your centenary.
Yes, you're absolutely right. This was meant to be a really big year for us because we were celebrating 100 years since we were set up. Of course, with the COVID-19 pandemic, a lot of the plans we had for this year to celebrate our achievements and also a look forward to the future, that all changed in March this year.
So the Highland Show, these podcasts are in conjunction with the Royal Highland Agricultural Society of Scotland, and they're focusing on the Highland Show. And I believe that Morden had plans to mark your centenary at this year's show.
Yes, we did. Morden had we had a big programme set up for the Highland Show this year. In the old days, when Morden was set up in the 1920s, we started off with, it was an old shepherd's hut on wheels, which was the mobile laboratory. And that laboratory went out into the field and worked with the farmers to find out the causes of diseases. And we thought it would be really good this year if we could resurrect that mobile laboratory and make it a modern, up-to-date bus, as it were. So we've been building this new mobile laboratory and outreach bus, which we were going to launch at the Highland Show this year. It was really to help promote some of the work we're doing. We're working on rapid pen-side diagnostics, which we could demonstrate to farmers. And we've also got the facility within the bus to do a lot of public engagement and outreach work. Because one of the major things we do at Morden, because we have a big membership base, we've got about 12,000 farmer members all over the UK, what we wanted to do is use this to help with outreach. So we can actually communicate a lot of the work we do to farmers, and the Highland Show is a fantastic venue for that. I think with the COVID outbreak, actually, there's a lot more interest in the public with testing, diagnostics, how do vaccines work? And I think the work we've been doing with the Royal Highland Society in education and outreach, although very much on the livestock side, the veterinary side, it's very pertinent at the moment for the public. So we were just very disappointed not to have the opportunity to launch it at the Highland, but we do hope that we will continue the collaboration with RHASS, and we will be taking the bus out to different venues, hopefully later this year or certainly into next year.
That's going to be a tremendous resource for us, and it's going to be, from what you're saying, it's going to be a really useful resource for your team too.
Yeah, I think it's perfect, and it resonates with our past, but it's also got the future look. So what it's going to do is allow us to get out into the big shows like the Highland, but also to the remote rural communities. So go back to our roots, get out on farm. We can actually take very high-tech stuff on this bus, because some of the new techniques we've got now work off our mobile phone. You can do gene sequencing in the field. You can do rapid 5-minute diagnostics. So we want to show the farmers what is available, what we can do to help, and also look at education, look at getting in about with some of the school kids and working with RHET to say, look, you could have a career as a disease detective. You could get out there, help the farming community, and it's really quite exciting. And this bus will enable us to do all of that. And being a mobile unit, it's got great potential.
The relationship with RHASS goes back right to the very beginning then?
Yes, it does. In fact, we were interested, we were looking up the history of the organisation, obviously for the centenary this year, and it was put together by RHASS and the National Farmers Union of Scotland, initially to get a group of flock masters together. So these would be the very proactive sheep farmers after the war. The major problems they had was that their sheep were dying of all sorts of different diseases. So they got together, formed an association. So it's a really good example of farmers working together to help themselves. And I say I'm very proud that here we are 100 years later. We're now a big international research organisation. We're known across the world for our work, but we're still owned and governed by farmers, which I think is a huge achievement. And therefore, the work we do is entirely relevant to what they need. And I think in certainly in the scientific world, people go on about is how important it is to have impact of your work and make your work relevant. Morden, in fact, has been doing that ever since they were set up. So in some ways, the foresight of the farmers all those years ago, working together with the Royal Highland Society, they've left us this fantastic legacy that we are very, very proud to uphold now and move forward working with RHASS to make sure that the research we do is useful and needed by the farmers.
I was actually personally lucky enough to have an involvement with Morden, 3 years back now? I wanted to know more about a nematodirus in my lambs. There was a trial at Morden that I could get involved in. It was brilliant. A researcher from Morden came out. She took samples. She took poo samples from a batch of my lambs. More importantly, she showed me how to do that. The samples were taken away up to the lab and analysed. It was also checking for resistance to some of the wormers that are available.
That, I think, was one of our PhD students, Lindsay Melville.
That's right, Lindsay.
She's been fantastic. And the other thing we're very keen to do at the Institute is to put as much emphasis on exchanging knowledge with the farmers. So we put as much emphasis on the communication of the science as doing the science. But behind all of that is our independence. So the farmers can hopefully trust the advice we give. It's backed up by science, but we have no vested interest in pushing a product at you. So I'm really pleased to hear that you have had first-hand experience of that, plus also the opportunity for a young scientist to get out and do some very interesting research.
It's called knowledge transfer now, isn't it? That's the kind of the technical name, but it's much more valuable than the raw research that you may get from, for example, a university. Yeah,
and I think, we like to see it, we sometimes call it knowledge exchange, because our scientists, and I'll include myself in that, I have learnt so much from getting out, speaking to farmers. You guys are working with the diseases day in, day out. You've taught us a lot too, because sometimes as scientists we have a focused view of the world, and in getting out and finding out what your issues are, but also we get samples from the farmers, like you helped Lindsay with her research. So it's very much a two-way street.
Good. I think that's brilliant. And just coming back to the reasoning of this episode in conjunction with RHASS, it's just great to see my support and those of other members going towards something like Morden, and what you've just told us is brilliant.
Yeah, and we're also, Monty, I have to say that the relationship that Morden has with RHASS is absolutely brilliant. It's very mutually beneficial. We have similar ethos. We're trying to work together to help the farming community and the rural industries. So you often find you get that multiplier effect. If you have two groups coming together, you get much more together than you would separately. We are very proud to be associated with the Royal Highland Society throughout that whole 100 years.
Thank you to Professor Innes for a fascinating chat. That's pretty much it for this episode. We'll leave you for now with a last word from Society Chief Exec Alan Laidlaw. He's going to talk a little bit more about the value of the Royal Highland Society and why just now it's more important than ever to give it your backing.
I sit here today, in the week after the date of when the Royal Highland Show should have been, and a lot of people saying, we'll be there next year, we'll be absolutely right behind you. And I think from my perspective, we need the sector behind us, we want support. The Society will have a challenging year this year and next. But I think, how would you support that? Make sure you're a member, because if you value the Royal Highland Show, it can only be delivered because of the strength of the members and our organisation. And if you've got opportunities to help us with fundraising, I think as an organisation we've tended to be quite successful at fundraising quietly, and we maybe need to be slightly more overt on that than we have been in the past. One of our directors said this morning, the whole of the emotion around the loss of the show not being here for rural Scotland and all the other shows around the country was because people had probably realised its value more because it hadn't been here. And if you just assume that you've always got access to something, sometimes you take it for granted. So if you're in that camp, spread the word, recruit another member, get them to become a life member, which is great value and a huge benefit to society. Fundamentally, if we can raise more money through fundraising, we can do more good.